You're all set.
Okay, so being 6:30 and having quorum, I'll open the planning board meeting for Wednesday, November 3rd, 2021. We're still operating under the Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order that was updated in 2021, suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, MGL 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15th, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place. This meeting of the Bridgewater Planning Board will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. There's no in-person attendance, and the members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access proceedings in real time. This meeting is being recorded and we'll post it within 48 hours on the town's website and/or social media pages. The following members of the planning board are participating remotely. I'm Patrick Driscoll, the chair. Mr. Michael McDonald is the vice chair. Mrs. Jean Garino is the clerk, and Mr. Stephen Geller. We have two associate members in attendance this evening as well, Mrs. Julie Sant'Angelo and Ms. Astrid Rojas. During the meeting, all votes will be taken as roll call votes. The following Bridgewater Town staff will also be participating remotely. Mrs. Jennifer DeBobrian, the Community Economic Development Director. Mrs. Jasmine Farinacci, the Assistant Town Planner. Mr. Greg Tanzi, the Town Engineer. I think I got everybody right. At this time, everyone's mics are muted. The board's mics will be unmuted throughout the whole meeting. And as items appear on the agenda, the project's representative mics will be unmuted. If we have a public hearing that allows for public comment, we'll ask that you use the chat feature to ask your question by listing your name and address in the question. The chair will recognize your questions in order. You can also use the raise my hand feature on the participant menu, and you'll be unmuted when the chair recognizes you. Again, please state your name and address before asking a question. If you're on the phone, you can dial *9 to raise your hand. So after reading all that about public hearings, we don't have any this evening. Item 3 on the agenda is public meetings. We have Oldfield Estates. This is a request for a minor modification and a discussion about driveways, common driveways, I guess. So with that being said, I believe Attorney Castanetti or the engineering firm for Longville Homes is with us.
Yes, it's Lee Castagnetti presenting this evening. So on the first item, the request for the minor modification, if you have I don't know if you have access to the approved subdivision plan, but the construction detail sheet that has the detail for the Cape Cod berm shows a 6-inch Cape Cod berm, which was a little unusual. We had never seen that before, and we specifically presented it to PJ Keating, and their field rep had told us that they can do a berm in the manner shown on this detail. So we built the sidewalk accordingly to accommodate a berm, a Cape Cod berm that size. When we went to have them actually get ready to do the finished course paving and determine that the berm could be done to accommodate the sidewalk at the elevation that we had built it, they informed us that there is no such thing. There is no paving machine known to mankind that can create a monolithic berm more than 4.5 inches. So we discussed with DPW some potential solutions, had a meeting in the field with DPW, brought some sketches of similar to what's attached to the letter that I submitted to you. And it was agreed in the field that that was an acceptable solution. We mistakenly understood the result of that meeting to have indicated that, and then we were acting a bit in haste to, with the season moving quickly and weather dependent, trying to get the finished course pavement down as early as quickly as possible. We took that meeting, the results of that meeting, to have meant that it was an approved field change. And based on that, we, as I said, mistakenly acting in haste, proceeded to actually install the berm as shown on the on this sketch attached to my letter, which is the same berm that was shown to the DPW, to Azu and Paul in the field. We recognize that we acted out of order and should have been before the planning board at this point. And we will, if this is not acceptable to you, we will do whatever has to be done to provide an end product that is acceptable to you.
Before we have board questions, is Mr. Tanzi on with us?
I believe he is, yes.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I am here. I reviewed the approved plan that you showed a few moments earlier, and the detail for the Cape Cod berm is a Cape Cod berm, a 3-inch high Cape Cod berm that's 12 inches wide, and it's also depicted on the cross section detail of the approved definitive plan, and that would be I'm looking at sheet CD1, which is construction detail 1. You know, I did not see any detail that was approved for a 6-inch berm. I had a brief conversation with the DPW director, and he said that he informed the applicant that if they want to make a modification, they first have to come to the planning board, and that he wanted to see a detailed sketch of what was being proposed, but nobody ever gave any formal approval to do what was out there, certainly not in writing. I can tell you that the DPW and myself have been to the site. We visited the site, and the DPW is of the opinion that that berm, as constructed, will not last a plowing season. And I have to agree. You can see in this picture here, the berm isn't even monolithically poured with the top course pavement, which would make it even weaker. Even if it was poured monolithically, I don't see the DPW approving it. You don't have to go very far. I mean, you can look at any concrete curbing that's been installed for a number of years, 10 years or so. I mean, it holds up, but you can see what a plow does. I mean, when the plow hits something, it can chip it. It can even chip granite, but bituminous concrete berms just do not hold up to plows. I'll reiterate that the DPW has stated that they don't believe that this berm, and they have been out here, they have seen what was installed, and they don't believe that that berm will last a plowing season.
Thank you, Mr. Tanzi. Does the board have any questions at this point for Mr. Tanzi? So I think the first thing we need to do is decide whether it's a major or minor modification. And if it's minor, we can continue to discuss it. If it's major, we can advertise it with the abutters and treat it as a major modification.
So
But-
has this already been put in throughout the entire place?
Well,
No.
most- yeah. Well, I'd say
No.
about half I went out there. So,
That-
go ahead.
That's correct. The first phase, up to the intersection of Timber Lane and just before the cul-de-sac for Oldfield Road, it was the sidewalks had been installed. That was our phase one, and the sidewalks were all installed for that. And I'd like to point out a comment in response to the town engineer's comment. If you look at that detail, the detail clearly calls out that the height of the monolithic Cape Cod berm is 6 inches. It's sideways. The number is to the upright left, and designates the height of the berm at 6 inches. It's clearly set as a 6-inch berm on the plan. And the second comment I have to make is that the DPW, we didn't act without the DPW and both Azu and Paul in the field indicating that they approved of this solution. That they may have changed their minds afterwards. Maybe they have, maybe they haven't. I don't know. They're not here to speak, and I'm not going to speak for them. But I was in attendance at that meeting, and we proceeded because they both, in fact, affirmatively approved this as a solution. And the third thing is that, no, it's not a monolithic pour. I indicated that we could not do a 6-inch berm monolithically. However, that is not the finished course pavement that's on the road now. The berm was put in first with the intent that the finished course pavement would be put in abutting to it to help to secure the berm more firmly in place than to have it set on top of the finished course pavement.
Attorney Castaneda or Mr. Tanzi, could you show me? I see 3 inches there. Is that 6 inches or 3 inches?
So we always interpreted it as a 3-inch berm. The way that the berm is drawn there, the proportionality of it is, you've got 1 foot going off horizontal with a width and 3 inches high. If it was a 6-inch berm, you'd have a 45-degree angle being made off the pavement.
The number that's called out on the plan is on the detail is 6 inches. It doesn't say to use proportionality. It calls out a 6-inch high berm. The number is clearly set right there in the detail.
All right. So just a little bit of history too, though. I think one of the initial comments of the subdivision when the Latolas brought it forward to us is that I think a lot of us thought it was going to be a collector street because overall that Oldfield services over 60 residential units. So initially, one of the initial comments before it was approved, and it was approved with the monolithic Cape Cod berm, was that it would have the monolithic berm. I think the initial comment, one of our initial comments was that we wanted vertical granite. And then I believe it was Silver's office that came back to us and said, this is a different subdivision from phase one. And we went back and forth, and I think it was determined to be a separate subdivision. It was a cluster subdivision. And the first phase was a conventional subdivision. So we allowed the monolithic Cape Cod berm. My feeling is it would be a major modification, but I also, if I wouldn't support it, I want it to be monolithic. We clearly state in our rules and regs that the Cape Cod berm shall be installed monolithically with the roadway pavement in order to form a proper bond between the Cape Cod berm and the pavement. So I would want it to be done with the top course all one monolithically. And if they want to keep that height and do it separately, I'd be okay with a change to granite, but not to this high hat or whatever you want to call it. But I would call it a major modification. Any other board comments?
So in the other phase, they did a Cape Cod berm. Is that one 3 inches?
Phase one, it's about 3 inches. Yeah, I was out there today.
So this is clearly a detail that was actually created wrong by the engineer. And the contractor should have caught it if he knew he couldn't do a 6 inch. And then that should have been brought as basically a RFI back to your general contractor who built it and say, we can't do a 6. What do you want?
And, you know, I also sent Jasmine a picture today if she wants to share it. I was in a neighborhood in Norfolk the other day, or a project in Norfolk, and I just happened to step up on the curb, and I stepped over it, and the town was ripping it out in a certain section. And you can see how it just breaks up. See how it just breaks up like that?
Yeah. I mean, I definitely agree with Mr. Tanzi that that plows will just destroy that curbing. I mean, it's not so much that the streets get plowed not just with pickup trucks, but they actually get plowed with big loaders and everything else. And you get a big storm, they don't see it, they're gonna take that out.
So I think what we should do now with the information we got from Attorney Castanetti and Mr. Tanzi is decide whether we think this is a major or minor modification, and if we want to, and how we want to proceed with it.
Yeah, I think I'd agree. This is a major modification.
Do we have a second for discussion? Or is that a motion, Mr. McDonald?
Yeah, sure. I'll make a motion to consider it a major modification.
Do we have a second for discussion?
I'll second it.
So just not discussion. Do we have any discussion on it? I don't want to waste Attorney Castronetti's time paying a fee and everything else if it's something we don't think we'd support anyway. So is there some discussion around? I mean, I'm against this high hat of this non-monolithic berm myself. I'd be okay with granite or the way we do it or the way we allow for it in town. Bring the sidewalks down or either that or keep the sidewalks at that height and do vertical granite. I'd be okay with that if they want to make that change. But this high hat or a hat or whatever you want to call it, I wouldn't be in favor of. So even if it came back as a major modification, I wouldn't support it.
But does Mr. Castanetti agree, would he agree tonight to lower it to a 3 inch Cape Cod berm like the laws say and move forward with it, or?
Well, he can do that without our approval anyway, so.
Okay.
I believe, wouldn't that be correct, Mr. Tanzi?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, this current one, like everyone's saying, it's just not going to hold up. So it's not acceptable to keep that going forward.
And this would be throughout the whole development eventually, would it?
The second phase is being done with a 3.5 inch berm.
And the first phase is too. So you're gonna have the second phase with this different treatment. I don't think it's a good idea. I wouldn't support it, so. But we have a motion and a second to make it a major modification. Do we have any other discussion? I don't. Mr. McDonald, Mr. Guarino, and Mr. Deli are all set?
Yep. I mean, that's yeah. I think everyone's pretty unanimous on this one.
I just want to give, direction so he doesn't go file for it and then we deny it, you know what I mean?
Yeah. No. Yeah. Exactly. I wouldn't approve this as a modification.
I don't feel that's right either, so. All right, so I'll take the roll. Mr. Geller,
Yes.
Mrs. Guarino,
Yes.
Mr. McDonald,
Yes.
And I'm a yes, so we treat it as a major modification, but I don't think it would have any support, so. Okay. Next up on the agenda, we have a discussion on driveways. Is this something that Mr. Tanzi wants to take, or Attorney Castanetti?
Whatever order you prefer, Mr. Chairman.
I don't think we have anything on it in our packet.
So Pat, I can give you a brief, just overall, and I can give you an introduction, and then if Greg wants to follow that up. I think it was actually Greg's first or second day with us in Bridgewater. He brought this to our attention when he was doing a review of these as-built that it appears that the driveways are built as common driveways and no special permit was granted by the planning board for these 4 lots and 2 common driveways effectively. So we reached out to Attorney Castanetti and explained that to him, and it said that he would need to file for a special permit or break up the driveways. Attorney Castanetti believes that they're not common driveways, and he'd like the board to make that decision before he goes forward with how he's going to proceed. So that's why it's here before you. I can let Greg tell you his rationale behind the common driveways.
All right, so before Mr. Tanzi continues, I'll just say that I printed off the common driveway zoning that we have in town.
Yeah, I have it here too.
So we cannot issue a special permit in a residential neighborhood first.
Correct, correct. That's correct.
So it says in commercial districts only.
Okay.
Now, this was approved under our old cluster zoning bylaw,
Yep.
not the current one.
Right. So I'd have to go back and see if they're allowed under that.
Right, but I don't think they were allowed under that either.
Okay.
But wait, these are not common driveways. Each driveway is on its own lot.
So,
They're
Attorney
legally,
Cass- so Attorney Cass-
they're legally separated by the boundary line between the lots. They're each owned separately by the lot owner, and they provide private ingress and egress to and from each lot separately. There is no commonality. There is no common use. There is no common obligation. There is nothing common about these driveways. They're private, separate driveways, legally separately owned by each lot owner.
So Attorney Castanetti, I went out there today after I heard about it and looked at it. And then in our zoning, it states that a common driveway is a travel way to accommodate vehicular and pedestrian circulation between a public way and pre-existing adjoining lots. So when I went out there, the question I asked myself was, if I put a fence on my lot line in the middle of that driveway, is there proper vehicular access to both of those sites? Is there adequate width to that pavement on each side?
There is.
What is the width of that pavement?
10 feet,
So that's 20 feet paved wide?
correct.
So, Mr. Tanzi, do you have any comments on this, sir?
Well, conceivably, you could have 2-way traffic. One lot, somebody leaving their house while another vehicle pulls in going to the other house. That creates a 10-foot wide lane for each vehicle. Most lanes are a minimum of 11-foot wide. A lot of driveways are a minimum of 12 feet wide, just to accommodate an 11-foot lane. It's really up to the board to decide, but typical lane width at a minimum is 11 feet. Could 20 feet conceivably work? Yes, it could. It's a tight squeeze, but the norm for a width of a single family driveway is 12 or 11 feet. I don't know if the board would like to entertain the thought of widening the driveway by a foot or two on either side. Again, that's the purview of the board. But I mean, you do bring up a very valid point. If a fence was put down the center line of that lot line, the center of the driveway, could vehicles pass and repass, safely? It would be a very tight squeeze. Now, given the location of these houses being set back, I mean, can an emergency vehicle run down a 10-foot wide lane? Probably not, depending upon what type of a vehicle it is. I mean, an ambulance, maybe not. Well, ambulances are pretty wide, by the way. A fire truck, police car, yes, but when you start looking at the various scenarios that may occur, it does change the perspective a bit, and these are the things that the board should will have to consider and make a decision on. Again, the board is free to entertain the notion of widening it if it thinks that it's appropriate, or the board can, the board has the power to make whatever decision it wants. There is one thing that I would like to bring to the board's attention. On one of the common driveway, or one of the driveways, let's just call it a driveway for now, it cuts a corner, and it encroaches on the abutters' lots. I don't know if you can call that plan up. It was a lot, I think it was 27 and 28, lots 27 and 28, if I'm not mistaken.
Lot 28 has at the top of the hill has a portion of its driveway on lot 27 under an exclusive use easement.
So you do have an easement for that?
That's correct.
Okay, all right. So, I mean, with that, Mr. Chairman, I really don't have much more to offer. And if any member has any questions for me, I would be more than happy to entertain them.
So on the approved plan, where curb cut shown and driveway location shown for these two lots?
The approved
Subdivision plan?
subdivision plan?
I believe they were, and I believe they were in a different location. I believe the houses were flipped upon construction.
In zoning, we don't have any distance from the lot line to pavement, do we?
No, you mean
No.
from driveway to driveway?
If I want to pave right up to the edge of my lot line, could I?
Yes, you could. The only thing we have in zoning that requires a distance is when you have a retreat lot, you have to be 25 feet from the next driveway.
That's correct.
So a driveway, we determined to be a travel way which accommodates vehicular circulation between a street and one adjoining lot within a residential zoning district. Such way shall not be greater than 24 feet in width as measured at the paved surface of the adjoining street.
The subdivision plan on sheet GR5, the subdivision plan shows the driveways in the same manner that we constructed them.
Do you have the access to that, Mrs. Farinacci?
I am just pulling up that sheet. He said it's GR5, so it's just gonna take me a
GR5.
moment to find that. Sorry.
An extremely faint line on the plans, but there's a very sound reason for having done it this way. You have utility poles with topography that's working against you. The poles cannot be moved and you cannot change the depth. You can't reduce the ground area around the poles. So additional disturbance of the area becomes extremely challenging working around those utility poles. I don't know if that's what Larry Silva's thoughts were when he did this, but I know that physically in the field, that's what drove us to do this and minimize as much disturbance as possible, including that center area between 28 and 29. We did not cut that down the way it's shown on this plan, but we actually left it intact and protected a pretty significant and attractive cluster of trees.
So, Mr. Tansey and Mrs. DeVoegran, if we don't have an offset from a lot line for pavement, theoretically, two people could pave right up to each other. Is that correct or not correct?
That is correct.
Would you agree with that, Mr. Tansey?
I do.
But then the question arises is if somebody does decide to put a barrier between them or something, would there be adequate area to expand or to get an emergency fire truck or ambulance up to those homes?
Ambulance, police vehicle, sure. Fire truck, probably not. Which would make it seem rather stupid for somebody to put a barrier in between the two driveways and know that that would preclude a fire truck from going there.
But even if they don't put a fence up, if somebody doesn't plow their part of the driveway and somebody only plows their part of the driveway, is that enough room for, like if somebody goes away for the winter and doesn't plow their driveway and only one half of the driveway gets plowed, is that enough room for a fire truck to get? I mean, I'm just throwing out scenarios.
No, but the same holds true if I have a lot that's on the street that's got a 20-foot wide driveway. If I have a blizzard and I have 3 feet of snow on it and I go away for the winter and nobody plows it, does a fire truck be able to pull up my driveway?
But at least that's only your house you're affecting if you don't plow your driveway. If you don't plow your driveway and you have somebody else and the truck can't get to the house that tried to plow their driveway and there's people living there, then that's a problem.
Is there a problem with widening these driveways a little bit? 1 or 2 feet each?
No, we can do that.
You know, I think what we're trying to do, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Tansey, but we're trying to make them as uncommon as possible, right? So if somebody wants to cut out their, 2 feet and put an arborvitae barrier or something in there, the other abutting driveway still has adequate access. Is that correct?
Right. I mean, one of the things that a true common driveway has about it, well, typically it'll be on an easement. There'll be some agreement that both homeowners have to adhere to, that they don't, do something foolish like, alter the pavement or put a fence down the middle, and that way the two lanes could be used for an emergency access. But barring those and they also have a maintenance, typically will have a maintenance agreement so that, you know, the whole thing will be plowed. Ms. Bovary has, we had a very good comment. If one side gets plowed, it could leave a, you know, a snowbank on one side of the driveway that could, you know, block off access to one of the lots. So if the pavement was widened and it just allowed for you know, vehicular access to flow freely on both sides, if you know, one of these contingencies were to occur, I think that would be a solution.
So I guess our job tonight is to determine whether or not this is a common driveway or not, right?
Yes.
But is that our job? Because it's in zoning and Mr. Solari is the zoning enforcement officer. So wouldn't he be the one to determine whether it was a common driveway or not? And then if he ruled it was, they'd have to get a variance?
He did rule that it was, and you're the special permit granting authority for driveways. So you're the ones who are charged with the
But
responsibility of defining whether or not this is or isn't a common driveway.
only in the commercial districts.
True.
So I don't know if this is the right spot here. You know what I mean? Because if Mr. Solari made a determination that this was a common driveway, and common driveways, we can grant those in commercial districts, but we can't in residential. If it was determined to be a common driveway, it would need a variance.
Or arguably, Attorney Castanetti can appeal Steve's decision to the ZBA
Correct.
and have them determine whether or not it's a common driveway.
Right, because I don't think we have the authority. This is in zoning, and it states in section,
It's section 9.9.
says 9.91. The special permit required. The planning board shall serve as the special permit granting authority under the section. The planning board may approve through a special permit the construction of common driveway in a commercial or industrial district for commercial or industrial uses only.
Yeah, so there's really no action we can even take here. From what it sounds like. One way or another.
I think this came to the wrong board. I think Attorney Castanetti has to appeal Mr. Solari's decision or seek a variance. Has Mr. Solari provided it in writing?
No.
No.
So maybe having this discussion with Mr. Solari before he puts something in writing would be the best place to start, correct? Or
Yes.
present these facts to him?
Yes.
Mr. Tanzi, Mrs. DeBoer?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
I think he'd be willing to have that conversation with Lee. I don't think he would be opposed to that.
And obviously, hopefully he'd loop in Mr. Tanzi regarding our conversation this evening and go from there. Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I guess so.
Okay.
Oh, man. Not organized tonight. Where's my agenda?
Do you need the agenda posted, Pat, shared, Pat? Is that what you're trying to find?
I'm looking. I just was, I printed off the sections of zoning, so I didn't have to flip back and forth on the screen, and I got them everywhere, so. So we have 680 Summer Street, this is a covenant release. I know there's an application, this was an old Nelson project, I believe I read. So-
Nelson Woods, I think, was the name of the subdivision from the 90s.
And so what's the?
Pat, are your glasses broken?
They're broken. I'm not having a good day. I sat on my glasses. I can't see anymore. I went to the doctor.
Sorry, I don't mean to laugh at you.
I
Sorry.
went to the doctor. He told me I'm fat. My cholesterol's through the roof, and I have to start eating salads and drinking smoothies. So, not a good day.
Okay.
I'll share mine with you and it'll bring yours down.
You know what the funny thing is, no matter what I do with my cholesterol, it's always high. So.
So I'm not sure if there's anybody here representing the requestor for this, but they're selling the new buyer for the home, and they're trying to close on the home, but obviously this is encumbering the title, so they just need the covenant released.
So is this on the side of Summer Street that abuts the railroad tracks, so across from Nelson Woods?
It abuts the railroad tracks.
And this, so I saw there's also a minor, there was a modification for Nelson Woods though, that runs from Conant Street to Flag Street that, that there was a thing in there about streetlights and underground utilities. What does that have to do with this?
I have no idea.
So,
Was it in your, it was in your
Yeah.
packet?
yeah, that's why I was confused, because 680 Summer Street's on the opposite side of Summer Street. That I think abuts the railroad tracks.
No, I'm pretty sure this abuts the railroad tracks because the environmental planner went out yesterday to review it for conservation, and he told me that it abutted the railroad tracks.
Yeah, I have it up on satellite. It does above the tracks.
So, but there's a letter here from August 26th. This talks about the Bridgewater Planning Board held a public hearing under Chapter 41, Section 81W for Nelson Woods. Nelson Woods is from Nelson Woods is from Flag Street to Conant Street, and there's two cul-de-sacs off it. And this is about
That's the-
underground.
Yeah, that just came to us as part of, that's recorded at the Registry of Deeds, and that's what's encumbering the title. That's what they need. They need a release of the covenant, which is the Form D, and then this letter, which was recorded to modify Nelson Woods, which I guess 680 Summer Street was part of that subdivision. They need
I
a
would
release.
imagine it was a Form A, because the only thing on the other side of it is town on land on one side, and the Summer Street's a public way.
I obviously wasn't here in 95 or whenever it was, 96. So I can't speak to how this lot fits into the subdivision. I can just speak to it's encumbered by the covenant and this letter.
Well, it says, I think the confusion is John Nelson lived at 680 Summer Street.
Okay.
So you can see on the bottom, it says mail to John Nelson, 680 Summer Street.
So maybe that's why it's encumbered. I'm not sure,
But I have no idea why. So is there some reason this wasn't fully released?
I don't believe so. We couldn't find anything. We researched the plans and the decision. We couldn't find any reason why it wouldn't have been released.
Have we accepted it as a public way, all 3 cul-de-sacs?
Yes.
You know, honestly, I think the only reason I think somebody doesn't know what they're reading and they see John Nelson, 680 Summer Street on the bottom. Because this has nothing to do with those properties. This has to do with the subdivision, which isn't even contiguous with this parcel. But
Yeah, you might be right on that from what I'm reading on it. Not too bad Leslie's not here. She signed off on it.
She retired too early.
Yeah.
so what are they asking us to do? Just release this Form D covenant?
Yeah, just take a vote to release the Form D covenant.
And
And then if it's not needed, it's not needed, but at least it's done if you need it.
there's no bond being held in this neighborhood or anything?
No, the bond has all been released.
And all the lots have been released?
All the what?
All the lots have been released?
Yes.
That's an odd one.
Yeah, I think it's a mistake. I think somebody doesn't know what they're doing and they saw the address on the bottom. And that's just a mail to address. But it's staff's recommendation to vote to release this Form D.
Yes.
I guess I'll make a motion to release it then. If it exists at all, it's an odd. I don't see what harm it could do. I suppose because it probably doesn't exist.
There's no funds involved, so
Yeah, no funds held, no lots held.
There's no open space or anything on the table that this would affect or anything like that. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right, so we have a motion by Mr. McDonald,
Mhm.
second it.
second by Mr. Geller. Any discussion?
I really hope there's something we're not missing, but it doesn't look like there is. So I mean, yeah, that's about all I got, I guess.
I'll just state, I don't think this has anything to do with 680 Summer Street, but if there's still an outstanding covenant for that neighborhood, we should probably release it anyway. I bet somewhere, if we look at minutes, it probably was released, but I'll go along with it, so.
Yeah.
All right, so do we have any more discussion? So Mr. McDonald,
Yes.
Mrs. Garino,
Yes,
Mr. Geller?
Yes,
And I'm a yes. Okay, so the minutes we're gonna hold on, Mr. DeBobrian and Mrs. Farinacci started to update them and made some of the corrections, but if people read them and have comments, please get them comments because I'd like to act on them at our next meeting. I know some changes were made like from past to present tense, but I still had some corrections that I provided to Mr. DeBobrian. So if anybody has any comments on them, please get them to them sooner than later.
Pat, you skipped over Crimson Heights bond release.
Yeah.
Oh,
Right,
yes,
I'm
yeah,
leaving, yeah.
that's right, sorry.
So are there any board, committee, or liaison reports? No. So, Mr. McDonald, are you okay handling the Crimson Heights bond release?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
And I'm gonna sign off.
Alrighty. Have a good night, Pat.
Pat.
Go eat a salad or something for dinner.
So, Mr. Chairman, just for your knowledge, I did go out there. I did
No, Mr. Tanzi, I have a conflict on this table, so I'm gonna sign off.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
Yeah, just wait 1 second, Greg, and then we'll have Michael will handle that one.
oh,
So
sure.
just wait 1 second.
I'm involved in the development of another project, so I recuse, even though I'm not involved in this project, I recuse myself, so. Good night, everyone.
Have a good one.
Bye, Pat.
Pat,
Night.
All right, Michael, you're up.
Alrighty. So yeah, Crimson Heights bond release, looks like a request to release, $84,990, received on October 15th. Did we ever receive the as-built that the, engineer requested?
Yes, we did. And the as-built plan looked pretty good. I did have some comments on it. I went out and I did a site visit. The only thing that I could see that wasn't done is I popped the rims on some catch basins, and they didn't have the hoods on the catch basins. They were never installed. I'm not sure why that they weren't, but they weren't installed. The approved plan showed catch basins to have 4-foot sumps and to be installed. That was one thing. The other thing was when they paved the top course of the road, they didn't key the top course into the top course pavement of the driveways. So what happens is there's a lip of top course pavement running across each driveway. The problem with that is when it goes to get plowed, that plow is going to run up over that lip instead of being a flush and smooth transition between the driveway and the top of the Cape Cod berm. And that could, that will ultimately damage the berm and the pavement. I spoke with Azu earlier, and I suggested that they key that into the top course pavement of the driveways, and he agreed with me on that. Other than that, I really didn't find anything that wasn't done. There was one issue with Concom. There was some markers for the wetland. They installed PVC pipes, and they were supposed to be painted green. They weren't. I mean, that was just a minor thing, but that's Concom. The board may wish to have them clean out the catch basins before they, release surety or take the road over on street acceptance, just so that you've got a working product that, it doesn't have excessive amounts of sediment from construction in the traps. I also noticed that a tree did come down in the basin, in the detention basin, due to the storm, and that's something that should be removed. But other than those, issues, I didn't see any other outstanding issues with the road.
Okay, admittedly, the lip, one sounds like it could be quite an issue down the line. So that's something we definitely need to see addressed. Is the developer here to speak on this request?
No.
Or?
No.
Yeah, any more questions or comments on the board, I suppose?
the original plans call for the driveways to be keyed into the street.
Yes, it's just standard practice to have.
Mhm.
I mean, they have to be keyed in now because they weren't monolithically poured. Usually,
Right.
what happens is the berm is poured first, and after that, the driveways are then poured, and there's a keyway that's created across the driveway when the berm is put, just because they put a board there when when they were paving, and it creates a nice flush and vertical lip that you can pave the driveway, the top course driveway right up to it. And now you've got a smooth transition. But they did it backwards. They paved the finished course of the driveways first, and then the finished course of the roadway last. Usually it goes the other way around. You don't even have to worry about, keying things in. So, the concern now is there's a lip of pavement that overlaps onto the existing driveway pavement right at the berm. And when it gets plowed, that plow's going to hit that berm, the lip of that berm, and it's going to damage it.
Yeah, I would definitely want to see that fixed before releasing the entirety of the bond for sure. And then there was another issue with the, I'm unfamiliar, what's a catch basin hood? You said those weren't installed?
Yes, over the outlet pipe of a catch basin, they put a structure that prevents water from flowing directly into the pipe. In other words, it has to flow up underneath the hood and then flow into the pipe. And what that does is it prevents anything that's floating in that catch basin, whether it be, grease, oil, some type of hydrocarbon pollutant, or even leaves or other, sticks or solids that are floating, and it prevents the pipe from getting clogged. It also prevents debris from entering into a subsurface infiltration structure. So they are important, and they're part of the Massachusetts stormwater policy that was adopted by the DEP, and it's for TSS removal, total suspended solids removal from the stormwater. So basically, it's a water quality device.
Right. Okay, yeah, it sounds like a pretty key component there
Yes.
to be missing. All right, Jennifer, does the department have a recommendation on this with these facts taken into account, or?
We would just see to whatever the town engineer recommends. So if he recommends holding a portion or the whole thing, that would be fine with us. So I'm, open to whatever his suggestion is at this time.
Yep, Mr. Tanzi, if you have a suggestion.
Yeah, you do want to, hold some money back. I mean, I would right now. I'd be shooting from the hip. They have $80,000 roughly in surety. They're looking for that to be released. Is that correct?
Yeah, it looks like about 85,000.
Yeah.
Greg, if it's easier, so you don't have to guess off the top of your head, we can certainly continue this for 2 weeks if you want some time to get some more firmer numbers about what it's going to cost them to do the repair. We'd be happy to do that, not to put you on the spot.
Yeah, it might be safer that way.
There's no hurry to do it, so
maybe the developer can install these things
in the 2 weeks time.
In the 2 weeks time, and if that's the case, then when we come back, maybe he can, have a larger release of the funds.
Yeah, I think that sounds like probably the best way to proceed. Anybody else? Opinion?
Oh, yeah.
I
Yes.
agree.
Greg, can you just put a memo or an email together for us so that we can get them to the developer so he knows exactly what it is he needs to do?
Yes, tomorrow I'm going to finish up that report, and it'll be a formal report, and I'll try to come up with an estimated cost of what would be a good amount to retain that would be in everybody's interest.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Excellent.
So we'll put this on your next agenda in 2 weeks.
Do we need a motion to do that for a bond release, or we could just?
No, just go ahead and put it on your
Perfect.
agenda.
Excellent.
Okay.
Okay.
Don't think you have anything else.
Yeah, if I'm reading correctly, that concludes our business for tonight. I think Pat already went through the director committee reports, all that kind of stuff, and we are moving the minutes till next meeting as well.
Correct.
All right, well, I guess that wraps us up for tonight.
It's the motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, gonna be a really short roll call vote. Mr. Geller,
Yes.
Mrs. Garino,
Yes.
and I'm a yes.
Great. Thanks, guys. Have a good night.
All right, thanks. Take it
Bye.
easy.
Yeah,
Good
thank
night.
you. Night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.